You thought you were hiding it. Your baby's cortisol levels say otherwise. I want to start there, because what I'm about to share with you is not a warning. It is not a guilt trip. It is something far more important than either of those things. It is an explanation for something that is happening inside your baby's body right now, every day, that no one ever told you about. Your stress is not invisible to your baby. It never was. Not when you held a smile in place while your heart was racing. Not when you lowered your voice to sound calm while your hands were tense. Not when you sat quietly feeding them while your mind was somewhere else entirely, running through everything that felt too heavy to carry. Your baby's nervous system is a biological detection system. It was built over millions of years of evolution to read the people it depends on for survival with extraordinary precision, and it has been reading you since before they were born. In 2025, a pre-registered study published in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry, one of the most rigorous experiments ever designed to test this question, gave us something no study had given us before: controlled, experimental evidence that a mother's acute stress directly transfers to her baby. Not through behavior that the baby consciously reads, through the body itself. And research from San Francisco had already shown years earlier that this transfer happens within minutes, not hours. Minutes. Stay with me through this, because this video has two halves. The first half will show you exactly what is happening, the mechanism, the speed, the research, the real neurological picture. The second half will tell you something the research also shows, something that most parents who find videos like this never hear: what repairs it, what buffers it, and why the fact that you are watching this right now actually matters more than you know. Let's start with the science. What is actually happening? The biology of stress contagion, the term researchers use, is stress contagion. And like all contagion, it does not require intention. It does not require awareness. It does not require any particular behavior. It simply requires proximity and the biological connection between a parent and their baby that begins in utero and continues through every feed, every hold, every ordinary moment of the first years of life. Here is the mechanism, and I want to walk you through it carefully, because understanding how it works is the difference between carrying this information as guilt and carrying it as knowledge. Your baby's primary stress response system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which researchers call the HPA axis, is not yet self-regulating at birth. The HPA axis is the system that governs the release of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. In adults, this system is largely self-contained. We experience a stressor, cortisol rises, the system regulates itself back down. But in infants, the HPA axis is immature. It does not self-regulate. Instead, it outsources regulation entirely to the caregiver. Researchers call this the social regulation of cortisol. When the caregiver is calm and present and responsive, the baby's cortisol stays regulated. When the caregiver is stressed, anxious, or emotionally unavailable, even subtly, even silently, the baby's cortisol rises accordingly. The caregiver is literally the baby's external stress regulation system, and the baby is running on it constantly. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable, documented, peer-reviewed physiology. The 2025 study, Controlled Experimental Evidence, the 2025 study, published in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry, led by researchers Bruinhoff, Begers, Lustermans, and De Weerth, was the first pre-registered controlled experiment to test this question directly. Previous research had shown correlations. This study induced stress deliberately and measured the result. 981 mother-infant dyads participated, with babies at 8 weeks postpartum. Mothers were separated from their infants and randomly assigned to one of two conditions. Some performed a trier-social stress test, a standardized laboratory protocol known to reliably induce acute stress, while others performed a non-stressful control task. Then the mothers were reunited with their babies. What the researchers measured was unambiguous. Mothers who had experienced the stressor showed measurably higher cortisol and altered caregiving behavior in the reunion. Their babies who had been in a separate room the entire time, with a different caregiver, with no exposure to anything stressful, showed elevated cortisol and increased crying compared to the babies whose mothers had not been stressed. The study concluded that maternal distress can transfer to infants through alterations in caregiving behavior, that even subtle changes in how a stressed parent holds, speaks to, and responds to their baby are enough to trigger a measurable stress response in the baby's own body. 8 weeks old. The mother hadn't done anything dramatic. She had simply come back from a stressful experience and picked up her baby, and her baby's cortisol rose. The UCSIF study, "It happens in minutes," the question that naturally follows that finding is, how fast does this happen? And here is where a landmark study from UC San Francisco becomes important. Dr. Sarah Waters, then a postdoctoral scholar in the UCSIF Department of Psychiatry, along with senior author Dr. Wendy Berry Mendez, fitted 69 mothers and their 12 to 14-month-old babies with cardiovascular sensors. Mothers were separated from their babies and assigned to give a 5-minute speech to evaluators, some of whom responded warmly, some of whom frowned, looked away, and gave negative feedback. Classic social stress induction. Then the mothers were reunited with their babies. The researchers tracked both mothers' and babies' cardiovascular stress responses in real time. The result was striking. Within minutes of being reunited with their stressed mothers, babies whose mothers had received negative feedback showed significant increases in heart rate relative to baseline. Babies whose mothers had been in the positive or neutral condition showed no such spike. And critically, the greater the mother's stress response, the greater the baby's stress response. The two were directly coupled. As Dr. Waters described it, before infants are verbal and able to express themselves fully, we can overlook how exquisitely attuned they are to the emotional tenor of their caregivers. Your infant may not be able to tell you that you seem stressed or ask you what is wrong, but as soon as she is in your arms, she is picking up on the bodily responses accompanying your emotional state and immediately begins to feel in her own body your own negative emotion. In your arms. Minutes. That is the window. The channels how your stress reaches your baby. Researchers have now identified multiple channels through which a parent's stress reaches a baby's nervous system simultaneously. Understanding each of them matters, because it explains why you cannot simply act calm, why the performance of calm is not the same as the regulation of calm. The first channel is behavioral. When you are stressed, your handling changes. The pace of a nappy change, the firmness of a hold, the speed of a feed, the tension in your arms. Tense, quick handling and slow, gentle handling produce measurably different physiological responses in an infant's body. Your baby's skin is full of sensory receptors that register the quality of touch long before they register anything else. They read your body before they read your face. The second channel is vocal. Your voice when you are stressed is different in pitch, in rhythm, in the fine acoustic qualities that your baby's auditory cortex has been tuned to detect since before birth. Babies as young as 6 months can distinguish the prosodic markers of a stressed voice from a regulated one. They don't need to understand words. They are reading the music, and the music tells them everything. The third channel is facial. Your face when you are stressed is different even when you are trying to smile. Researchers studying micro-expressions have found that genuine and performed emotional expressions are distinguishable even to untrained observers in a fraction of a second. Your baby's visual system in the first months of life is calibrated specifically to read the face of their primary caregiver. They are not a general-purpose face reader. They are a you reader. They notice the difference between your real face and your managing face. The fourth channel is hormonal. If you are breastfeeding, cortisol passes directly from your bloodstream into your milk. Research published in Scientific Reports tracking 305 mother-infant pairs found that maternal and infant cortisol levels were positively correlated at 1 month, showing early HPA synchrony. An infant's intestinal tract responds to breast milk by producing receptors that detect cortisol, activating neurochemical signals that travel to the brain and influence the development of stress response systems. Cortisol in milk is not a contamination. It is a biological communication system. The question is, what message it is consistently sending? And the fifth channel, the one that perhaps matters most, is physiological synchrony itself. Research using functional near-infrared spectroscopy to measure real-time brain activity shows that father-infant and mother-infant brain waves actually synchronize during interaction. A 2025 FNORS hyperscanning study found that father-infant inter-brain coherence was measurably greater than stranger-infant coherence. Parent and baby are not just emotionally connected, they are neurologically coupled in real time. What happens in your nervous system ripples directly into theirs. What chronic stress does the long-term picture brief? Manageable stress, followed by comfort and repair, is not harmful to your baby. I want to say that clearly, and I will return to it in the second half of this video. The nervous system is designed to handle acute stress. What struggles with what produces the outcomes that researchers track with genuine concern is chronic, unresolved, unregulated stress that becomes the baseline. When a baby's HPA axis is consistently activated when cortisol is chronically elevated rather than acutely raised and then regulated, the long-term picture is measurable. Research reviewed in biological psychiatry shows that chronic early stress exposure affects the hippocampus and amygdala, the brain regions governing memory, emotional regulation, and stress reactivity in ways that can persist into childhood and beyond. Imaging studies have shown reduced left hippocampal volume in infants exposed to high prenatal anxiety. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection system, shows altered development. A UCF study led by Dr. Nicole Bush followed 151 mothers and their babies, tracking stress across pregnancy and the postpartum period. Babies of mothers in the highest stress third were 22% more reactive to stress than babies of mothers in the lowest stress third. They recovered less quickly. Their temperamental surgency, their willingness to engage with and explore the world, to smile, to approach new things, was measurably lower. 22% more reactive, measurably less willing to engage with the world. And these were ordinary stressors, the stressors of ordinary modern life. Housing difficulties, relationship pressures, financial worry, the stressors that most parents carry quietly every day, convinced their baby cannot see them. Your baby sees them, not with their eyes, with their nervous system. The repair. What the research also shows now, we reach the second half. The part that the research shows just as clearly as everything I have shared with you so far. And the part that most parents never hear when they encounter the science of stress contagion. Repair works. Regulation works. And it does not require you to eliminate stress from your life. It requires something far more achievable. The research on what protects a baby from the developmental effects of parental stress is consistent and specific. It is not the absence of stress. It is the presence of a secure, responsive, attuned relationship. It is what researchers call sensitive caregiving, the ability to notice your baby's signals, to respond to them, to come back when you've been away, physically or emotionally. A 2024 study in developmental science found that the association between maternal psychiatric illness during pregnancy and elevated infant cortisol at baseline was not observed in infants who received sensitive, responsive caregiving postnatally. The prenatal stress was real. The postpartum cortisol elevation was real. And the sensitive caregiving canceled it out. Canceled it out. Not reduced it. Canceled it. This is what is called the buffering effect of secure attachment, and the research on it spans decades and hundreds of studies. Secure attachments built through consistent responsiveness, through coming back after ruptures, through the accumulated pattern of I am here, I see you, I return, protect babies from the developmental consequences of stress in ways that nothing else replicates. Research from the strange situation paradigm, the gold standard measure of infant attachment, shows that secure attachments have a measurable protective effect against what researchers call toxic stress. And studies confirm that caregivers need to be responsive approximately 50% of the time to foster secure attachment. Not 100%, not perfectly. 50%, done consistently, is enough. What actually helps? 3 things backed by the research. So, what does this look like in practice? The research points to 3 specific things. Not because they eliminate your stress, they won't, but because they interrupt the transfer and rebuild the buffer. The first is regulating before you pick them up. This is not always possible, but when it is, when you have 30 seconds before you go into them after a hard phone call, a difficult moment, a wave of anxiety, use those 30 seconds. 3 slow breaths, hands unclenched. 1 moment of arriving in your body before you arrive in theirs. The research on this is clear. Your regulated nervous system is what regulates theirs. You cannot give your baby what you have not first given yourself. The second is touch. Intentional, slow, present touch. Research consistently shows that physical contact measurably attenuates infant physiological stress reactivity. Heart rate drops. Cortisol output drops. Behavioral distress drops. Not because touch prevents stress, because it is one of the most direct pathways through which your regulated body communicates safety to theirs. Skin to skin. A slow hand on the back. A hold that isn't rushed. The quality of touch tells your baby's nervous system something that no words can. The third is repair. This is the one that matters most over time. Edtronic's research on the still face paradigmed the experiment where a mother briefly goes expressionless and then returns showed something profound. Babies who experienced brief disconnection followed by warm, genuine repair showed better emotional regulation than babies who never experienced any disconnection at all. The rupture and the repair together built more resilience than absence of rupture alone. What this means is that the moments when you weren't okay, when you were too stressed, too depleted, too inside your own pain to be fully present, those moments are not the story. The return is the story. Coming back, looking them in the eyes, being here now, even though you weren't a moment ago. That repair is not just good enough. It is actively building something in your baby's nervous system that nothing else can build. The knowledge that disconnection ends, that people come back, that the world is repairable. Your baby does not need you to be perfect. Your baby needs you to return. So here is where we are. The science is real. Your stress reaches your baby through 5 simultaneous channels: touch, voice, face, hormones, and the direct neurological coupling of your nervous systems. It happens in minutes. And in the context of chronic, unresolved stress, the developmental consequences are measurable, and the repair is equally real. Sensitive, responsive caregiving buffers the effects of parental stress with a power that the research describes as extraordinary. Coming back matters more than not leaving. Returning matters more than not rupturing. 50% responsiveness, done consistently, builds the secure attachment that protects your baby from everything else. You are already doing this. Every time you come back after you were somewhere else. Every time you put the phone down and look at them. Every time you take one breath before you pick them up. Every time you hold them a little longer because you need it as much as they do. There is something else the research shows that I want to leave you with. Dr. Waters, from the USEF Stress Contagion Study, said something that I think about often when I consider what parents are carrying right now. She said, "Our earliest lessons about how to manage stress and strong negative emotions in our day-to-day lives occur in the parent-child relationship. Your baby is not just absorbing your stress. They are absorbing how you handle it. They are absorbing the return, the breath before the pickup, the repair after the disconnection. They are learning from you that stress is survivable, that it is temporary, that it ends, that the person you depend on comes back. That is not a small thing to be learning in the first years of a life. That is perhaps the most important thing. If this video gave you something, a new way of understanding what your baby is experiencing, a moment of recognition, or the relief of knowing that repair is possible, share it. Because every parent deserves to understand the science of what is happening between them and their baby. And every parent deserves to know that what they do next matters more than what they did before. I'll see you in the next one.